Welcome back, everybody, to the 2018 Costa Mesa Pokemon Video Game Regional Championships. My name is Dewey High, and joining me at the desk, of course, is Len Duel. Len, welcome. You know, this is your hometown regional, I guess, and instead you're spending it with me. First off, I'd like to acknowledge, we did have some technical difficulties round one, but hopefully those have been resolved, and we can bring you a smooth running here in round two. And second off, a huge shout-out to Second City Gym for, helping us present this regional championship to the viewers at home. That's you guys.
Yeah. Thankfully, we have redundancies. We can get back online and bring these awesome matches.
Yeah, Nugget Bridge is back. We got an exciting round two matchup. In round one, we saw Shreyas, a former regional champion, take on James Eakes, who's always been a consistent player. Coming up in round two, we're going to have smart money players, really. I mean, Alberto Lara, that was your smart money. That was Kino's smart money. He is currently 1-0. He'll be facing off against Raghav Malaviya.
Yeah.
Who was Trainer Tower's smart money.
Oh, was he?
Yeah.
Oh, so a clash here. Nugget Bridge smart money versus Trainer Tower smart money. We'll have to see who comes out on top.
Yeah, anyways, Raghav, he whiffed his World's invite last year, trying to make a comeback this year. I don't exactly know what his championship point standings are, but of course, Alberto Lara, the best player in North America, one of the strongest finishes in North America at the Oceania International Championships, and as well as already having a regional championship under his belt. Of course, he's also won multiple regional championships years before this as well.
Yeah, buckets of CP this year. Just laying it on.
Yeah, and, he's been a very consistent player throughout this whole season, so it's, great to see both these players already get paired up here in only just round two.
Yeah, should be a really good match. Going to be tough for one of these players to already have a loss on their record so early, but they'll know it was against another really solid player. Hopefully that player will help their tiebreaker win out the rest of the day.
Yeah, and Raghav actually last year at the Southern California Regional Championships in Anaheim made it all the way to, I believe, the top four. So he's trying to get a deep finish yet again this season in this regional championship. So
yeah, maybe looking for a win this year.
Yeah, and we have the team sheets for you ready. I believe the match is almost getting ready to get underway here. Alberto going to be running a team very similar to what he ran at the Oceania International Championships with Charizard, Snorlax, Celesteela, Gothitelle, Tapu Koko, and Landers. Really that combo of Gothitelle to kind of trap Pokemon in and then be able to use moves like Heal Pulse and set up Trick Room for maybe like that Charizard, that Celesteela, or that Snorlax.
Yeah, and we're on team preview now, so you've got the teams in front of you also.
Yep, Raghav over on the other side running Manectric, Bronzong, Tapu Fini, Landers, Therian, Incineroar, and Snorlax. So Manectric is one of those Pokemon that just won the regional championship over in Collinsville. So, Manectric kind of making an appearance. It's got a great, fast electric-type attack, which can really damage Charizards and Celesteelas.
It's really interesting to compare these two teams to me. They both have the Snorlax that's going to be key. And then they both have that Steel type, that Trick Room setter. On Raghav's team, it's merged both into Bronzong, but split on Alberto's side. And then Tapu Koko and Manectric, two fast electric types. So a lot of the same pieces here, even if it's very different Pokemon.
Yeah, and, it looks like Raghav has already locked in his team. He's already, he's probably seen the stream from Oceania, so, he already knows what he needs to do in order to kind of defeat that Gothitelle trap mode.
Yeah. Got to make sure he doesn't get things stuck in. Bronzong maybe doesn't offer enough damage. You've got to be wondering if it gets stuck on the field. Can you deal with something like Snorlax still?
Yeah.
That's what Gothitelle's always making you think about.
And over on Raghav's side, of course, he does have that Manectric option, and he does have that Landers Therian option as well. Landers Therian can pivot with that U-turn, and Manectric is a very well-known, Volt Switch user in order to kind of reset that Intimidate.
Yeah, get extra Intimidates out and get out of that Shadow Tag if you need to.
And here we go now, jumping into turn 0. Team preview is already done. Game 1 here between Alberto Lara and Raghav Malaviya. It looks like both players are ready to send out their Pokemon now, as the Alberto's team is going to be started off with Snorlax and Landers Therian. Raghav going to be sending out the Incineroar and the Manectric here. So, the Intimidate isn't out just yet for that Manectric, but of course it can easily just Mega Evolve. There's no point really to keep that Volt Switch, especially since that Tapu Koko's not in just yet. Yeah,
I mean, maybe if you were really worried about Tapu Koko, but and you wanted to protect something like that Tapu Fini, but it probably just won't come up very often in this match. So I'd expect to see Manectric Mega Evolve and getting that Intimidate in against Snorlax and Landers, two great things to Intimidate. Meanwhile, the Intimidate comes in from Landers onto Incineroar, which is pretty useful, but obviously wasted on Manectric. Landers is in a great spot here. You want to be earthquaking things like Incineroar and Nectric. Doesn't have to worry about fake out. I wouldn't be surprised to see the fake out come out in that slot, but if it does, you're just giving Snorlax a chance to start setting up. That Intimidate doesn't matter if you just belly drum on the same turn. And if you're predicting an Incineroar fake out, maybe you're not worried about damage much this turn.
Manectric now is going to Mega Evolve. It is going to get that Intimidate ability, which will help out so much. Going to drop that Landorus Therian attack stat by one stage, just trying to make sure that an Earthquake couldn't possibly KO both Incineroar and Manectric here. Incineroar does threaten that Snorlax with a knockoff. You don't want to have your Berry knocked off your Snorlax, as Incineroar goes straight for the fake out here. Going to hit in that Landorus, going to make sure it flinches and cannot move as Manectric goes for a Volt Switch here. Going to target down that Snorlax and be able to pivot. Going to switch back out and allow Raghav to really adjust to both these Pokemon being out on the field.
Yeah, bring in something that he wants to deal with these two better. Has to be worried about what that Snorlax is going to be doing at the end of this turn and trying to figure out what he can bring in to handle that upcoming move.
Tapu Fini is going to hit the field, and it is going to go ahead and activate that Misty Terrain with that Misty Surge ability as Snorlax uses his turn to go straight for a Belly Drum here. Going to go ahead and maximize that attack stat.
Yeah, right. Undo that Intimidate immediately, go all the way to +6 attack, and it's going to be threatening so much damage, but then that Berry can come out and heal it right back up.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why Snorlax is so good in this generation. 2017, 2018 was dominated by, is Snorlax going to be able to stay out on the field as long as possible and set up, Belly Drum, Curse, all sorts of different setup moves that it has because of its staying ability with that Berry.
Yeah,
and Gluttony ability.
Yeah, being able to heal 50% as soon as you hit 50% is incredible, and then being able to recycle that Berry if you need to.
And Landorus now using U-turn, going to go ahead and hit in that Incineroar slot, and, not much damage because of that Intimidate earlier. Of course, a lot of people are training their Incineroars to be very bulky here, being able to switch in and out, go for that fake out support later on. Gothitelle is going to hit the field, and Gothitelle is going to be setting that Shadow Tag ability to trap. As Tapu Fini reveals Haze, going to go ahead and reset Snorlax's attack stat there back to neutral, as well as getting rid of the Intimidate over on Incineroar as the knockoff hits into that Gothitelle, and it's going to go ahead and knock off a Berry as Snorlax goes for a double edge, but of course now this Snorlax isn't as threatening at all, still doing about 40% though, as Snorlax is heavily damaged by that recoil.
Yeah, an absolutely incredible turn for Raghav. I mean, that Alberto takes so much damage from that knockoff. Gothitelle is going to be much less useful than it otherwise would have been, as it doesn't have its Berry and is so low. And then Snorlax gets that Belly Drum, spends 50% of its health, spins that Berry to get those boosts, and Tapu Fini takes them right back away. So that double edge, you see how much less it does, not even going to two-hit KO Tapu Fini. And then Gothitelle does get knocked out. Those Intimidates can come back in. You can see Manectric hit the field again, and if Snorlax doesn't feel comfortable belly drumming anymore with knockoff possibly coming out and getting rid of the Berry, if it's able to recycle it, Tapu Fini hazing them back. Yeah, it's just going to be really difficult for Alberto to play back out of this situation. He's going to have to find some new option to deal with these two Pokemon.
Yeah, it looked like time was actually almost about to expire there on Alberto's side. It looks like Snorlax going to go for a Protect here, not going to want to get knocked off or even hit with a powerful attack from that Incineroar, as Tapu Fini kind of goes for a Muddy Water, going to land into the Gothitelle and get the KO. So, big part of Alberto's strategy is actually to keep that Gothitelle out on the field, but getting it knocked off right off the bat kind of makes it so that it can't stay out at all to be able to go for those heal pulses or even trap, as Incineroar does reveal that it is going for taunts here.
Yeah, trying to keep Snorlax from going for another Belly Drum if that's what it had felt like it needed to do. Instead, Snorlax just protects itself, reveals another move, and allows Gothitelle to get knocked out by that Muddy Water. Shadow Tag not going to be an option for Alberto anymore in this game. It's going to make those Intimidates much easier to play with for Raghav. Intimidate does come back out with Landorus, get Incineroar's attack stat even lower, but obviously Tapu Fini doesn't mind. He's going to keep pumping out those Muddy Waters.
Yeah, and, that's, it's always tough to see one of your Pokemon like Gothitelle get KO'd. That Trick Room support is also something that Snorlax really wants, but unfortunately now it looks like speed control is going to be in Raghav's favor, as Landorus Therian on Raghav's side now going to switch in for that Incineroar, going to use that Intimidate, and also, most importantly, reset Incineroar's attack set and reset that Fake Out Pressure for later on, as well as, that Intimidate's going to be big on this Snorlax because it knows it can't really Belly Drum because it can just go for an easy haze here, as the Landorus over on Alberto's side uses U-turn to switch back out and again save that Intimidate for later on. Alberto is going to have to reveal his last Pokemon. It is going to be Celesteela. So really, this team is really just trying to stay out on the field as long as possible, but here comes a Hydro Vortex from this Tapu Fini.
Yeah, going to be a lot more damage coming out this turn. Screen to see which slot was targeted, probably going after that Landorus, trying to get an easy KO. Instead, it's going to be big damage against the Celesteela, but probably not the KO. we now have seen Landorus on Raghav's side. We know Manectric's in the back. It's going to be so easy for him to just stack Intimidates over the course of this game. Losing that Shadow Tag to keep Pokemon in and restrict those Intimidates.
Wow.
Wow.
That did 50%. That's, I mean, when you see a Tapu Fini like that with Haze, you kind of expect it to kind of just be used for support. You know, just whatever damage can get out is just extra chip damage. But then to also invest your Z move on that Tapu Fini is kind of interesting. So, you know, it's a strange call by Raghav to have this support mix with an offensive Tapu Fini.
Yeah, it gives Tapu Fini an option to go for big damage, get a KO if you really need it, and, you know, put out 50% damage on Celesteela. It's going to be really useful for him.
Tapu Fini going to protect, going to try to preserve it for later on. You know, a lot of Tapu Finis do have some sort of recovery move, recovery item, but this Tapu Fini clearly does not because it is carrying that Waterium Z as the U-turn from Landers connects onto Alberto's side, and again, just trying to pivot those Intimidates for later on. You know, those Intimidates are also going to be important for that Celesteela as well, to try to mitigate the amount of damage that Heavy Slam is going to do as Manectric comes out, and of course that is easy for Manectric to come out in against that Celesteela because it can easily just target down that Celesteela with a very powerful Volt Switch or even a Thunderbolt here, as Celesteela is going to go for a Leech Seed, going to try to stay out on the field as long as possible as Snorlax hits into that Tapu Fini Protect.
Yeah, but one of the problems with Leech Seeding Manectric is it can just Volt Switch right back out, undo those seeds, and still put out nice damage against Celesteela, keep stacking those Intimidates. I think Raghav's going to be happy to just keep a really fluid board position, keep changing back and forth between Landorus and Manectric, and stack these Intimidates with 3 physical Pokemon left on Alberto's side.
And of course, you know, Landorus is still in the back. It might not be such an easy target for Raghav to hit in that slot, maybe probably expecting the Landorus to come right back in and try to take these electric type attacks for that Celesteela.
Yeah, I mean, if you can deny the Volt Switch by getting Landorus into that slot and then get another turn of Leech Seed off, that can be pretty useful. Tapu
Fini now going to retreat back to Raghav's side as Incineroar comes back out again with that fake out support, and of course going to be threatening with a very powerful Flare Blitz in that Celesteela. Celesteela now protects, not going to want to get KO'd by a Volt Switch as Snorlax goes for Protect as well, just really trying to buy his time here to try to adjust the position based on what Raghav's going to do. And, of course, preserve that Celesteela and get a little bit more of that Leech Seed damage out. Yeah, Manectric can't Volt Switch if both of your Pokemon are protecting. So Celesteela's going to heal a bit more here. Going to be pretty safely away from Volt Switch KO range, I think. Yeah, and, you know, maybe also trying to see where that Volt Switch was going to land so that Landorus can easily just go into that slot. You know, it's but Raghav's got to be thinking the same thing. Yeah, so now it comes down to the mind game. Where is Raghav going to go with his Volt Switch to reset that Leech Seed? Of course, Incineroar is also threatening, can go for some knockoffs everywhere to just knock off some items, you know. Smart play right now from Alberto to not try to recycle that, because if that berry gets knocked off at this point, you know, you want that Incineroar off the field in order for you to be able to go for a recycle. If recycle is even an option, you know, we've seen Protect and Belly Drum and Double Edge. There's only a spot for one more, so there's either no coverage move or no recycle. Oh, right. I mean, that could make sense since Gothitelle is known to be a Heal Pulse user on this team as Celesteela now. Oh, sorry. The Snorlax switches out. Landorus comes right back in, maybe expecting the Volt Switch to hit in that slot right there. The Intimidate landing into that Incineroar, that's going to be pretty big to kind of weaken the amount of damage dealt here. As the Manectric goes for a Volt Switch, it is going to target down that Celesteela. So maybe Alberto trying to get ahead of himself there, trying to maybe expect the Manectric is going to go back out and use that Intimidate for later on. Celesteela did take a lot of damage, and now it's actually being threatened to be KO'd by that Incineroar. Yeah, it could come out right now. We haven't seen Fake Out, so Incineroar's doing something this turn. Yep, Landorus comes back in, going to use the Intimidate ability that is so important in this format as Incineroar goes for a knockoff instead. Going to land in that Celesteela and knock off those leftovers, but gets a critical hit right there and gets the big KO anyways. Yeah, undoes that Intimidate that Landorus just came in with and gets the knockout off on Celesteela. So it's just going to be 2 Pokemon left for Alberto. 2 physical attackers, Intimidate left in the back. It's going to be really difficult for him here. Yeah, and now it just comes down to how much information can Alberto pick up from, you know, Raghav based on his team. You know, maybe like what item that Landorus could possibly be carrying. What, well, we already know that the Tapu Fini is Misty Surge. You know, you just want to try to get as much information as possible. Try to adjust going into Game 2 as a superpower from Landorus over on Raghav's side. Gets the KO on the Snorlax. That was a critical hit as well. Not going to matter too much because, you know, Landorus does have a very high attack stat, and Snorlax, it's super effective against it as Alberto goes for a Rock Slide here. Going to land into both Pokemon over on Raghav's side. Not going to get any KOs as they knock off from Raghav here. Going to land into that Landorus and knock off that Choice Scarf. So because the other suit Landorus is also, you know, went first, that's also a Choice Scarf Landorus. Yes, we have 2 Choice Scarf Landorses up against each other. Does get that
Choice Scarf knocked off, so no option to just Rock Slide flinch this game away. Manectric will be faster when it comes back in.
And now it's just going to come down to what kind of adjustments can Alberto make to try to take Game 2 and force that Game 3.
Yeah. It's going to have to try to protect Gothitelle more, especially knowing that it has that heal pulse. Snorlax is going to be relying on that for recovery. Needs to keep it around. Can't just switch into a knockoff again. Also needs to be wary of that haze. You can't, even if it seems like an easy position to go for that belly drum, it's just wasted effort if it just gets hazed away. So needs to find the right moment to get those boosts, and then be able to go immediately on the offensive and KO Tapu Fini. If Trick Room's up and you have that belly drum, you can just KO Tapu Fini before it hazes.
Yeah, and there's actually a lot of things over on Raghav's side to kind of mitigate that Snorlax setup. The Incineroar has knockoff to knock off that berry before it can utilize it. And, of course, the taunt was also revealed, too. So Incineroar has a lot of options here, and that's actually going to be a key Pokemon for Raghav to bring in order to try to mitigate. You want to have both Incineroar and the Tapu Fini out at some point. Well, you want one of them out in the field.
It's useful against so much of Alberto's team. I mean, it threatens damage against Celesteela with Flare Blitz. Obviously, we saw how useful that knockoff is.
Did so much damage that Gothitelle.
Yeah, so much. If Alberto did try to pivot here and go for Charizard, Incineroar is a great Pokemon to have in against Charizard because it just doesn't take that much damage. You can keep going after the partner and not be one of the few Pokemon that isn't entirely worried about those giant Charizard sun-boosted attacks.
Yeah, and Manectric is also exerting a lot of pressure as well because we didn't see Alberto bring a Mega at all. And, there's always a lot of debate coming into these tournaments, into a match, Is it a disadvantage for you to not bring your Mega because the Mega gets so much stronger?
Yeah, but, Alberto has to look on the other side and go, that Manectric's faster, has Volt Switch, and be worrying about that the entire time. Maybe expects that Landorus is Choice Scarf. That's another Rock Slide to have to worry about. Tapu Fini's got Water EMZ. That's going to be a lot of damage even in the sun. And then, of course, Incineroar, like we talked about, it's not a great position for Charizard. Maybe if you're worried about Bronzong, you want the offense, but lots of big threats.
If it gets KO'd, what did it really do? Nothing, right? So, it's so tough. This is kind of a tough matchup, actually, for Alberto. It just has so much.
There's great answers to almost everything Alberto's trying to do.
Manectric and Incineroar, the same leads for Raghav, as Charizard and Gothitelle are going to be the leads that Alberto decides to go with here. Going to try to hope that the Charizard can do some damage, but of course Manectric out there with Fake Out support. This could be an easy Trick Room setup, though.
Yeah, could be an easy Trick Room setup, but, Volt Switch knockoff is also KO on Gothitelle. Maybe not even needing the Volt Switch. We saw that last knockoff was after Intimidate. No Intimidate so far this turn.
Manectric now protecting, not going to want to get hit with anything here, and maybe save that Volt Switch just for a little bit later, as Charizard also protects. All right, as Incineroar goes for... Nope, it just protects all around. It looks like Incineroar is just going to go for an attack here, as Incineroar goes for a taunt in that Gothitelle protect. So no Fake Out coming out at all, just really trying to prevent Trick Room from getting set up with the taunt.
Yeah, Fake Out prevents Trick Room for one turn, but taunt forces the switch. You don't have to worry about Trick Room on the next turn, so tries to just get it in, keep that Gothitelle from being able to Trick Room, but instead the protect comes out, and Gothitelle's going to live to be a threat for another turn, but of course that taunt could just come right back out again.
Yeah, and a knockoff and a Volt Switch will also get the KO. No protect yet either or no Mega Evolution just yet, as now Manectric goes for a Mega Evolution. Really no point in Mega Evolving, just in case something decided to switch in last turn, maybe get it on the switch to adjust on Alberto's side of the board, as now the Intimidate comes out. Not going to matter against Charizard or this Gothitelle here, but it is going to be important later on once the Volt Switches start happening, as Charizard is also going to follow suit in Mega Evolve here. Going to go ahead and bring out that Drought. Such a strong Mega Evolution here, but it's just not a great match for it because of that Manectric over on the other side. As the Drought activates, going to bring out the harsh Sunlight. And here we go, Manectric going for a Rain Dance. Going to just go ahead and reset that weather. So an interesting tech move right there on Manectric to really combat against this Charizard here to bring out the rain, weaken its damage output.
That's so tough. Alberto, everything he tries to go for, there's a tech move on the other side.
Yep, and Charizard now goes for a Heat Wave. Not going to do that much damage because of that rain, so a great call right there from Raghav to go for that Rain Dance as the taunt lands on that Gothitelle, but Alberto must have seen it coming from a mile away, going for a Psychic instead. Going to hit into that Manectric slot. Going to bring it down to about 40% of its hit points remaining, but again, now this Manectric can just go for an easy Volt Switch.
But yeah, Manectric frail enough that Psychic is useful damage. If you can get Manectric off the field, get Charizard out to the back and then in again so you get that Sun, you don't have to worry about the Rain Dance and you don't have to worry about the Volt Switch. Manectric probably not getting the KO with Volt Switch. It goes for the Rain Dance instead.
Yep, Landers comes in for the Charizard here, going to try to take that Volt Switch and not really allow that Manectric to switch because of that Shadow Tag ability and because it can't hit into that Landers, but instead charging down that Gothitelle. This could be an easy KO here if that Incineroar goes for a knockoff and removing that Shadow Tag option from Alberto's side of the field.
Yeah, and a smart play by Raghav to expect that Landers coming in and not want to have to take another Psychic this turn.
Landers comes in, and because of the way that switching turn went, Landers over on Raghav's side actually gets the advantage because it gets its Intimidate off onto the Alberto's Landers, and Gothitelle does not get KO'd because of that Intimidate as Gothitelle goes for a Psychic again, going to hit in that Landers slot. But again, Gothitelle almost getting KO'd, so wow.
Yeah, it's still good Psychic damage, but I'm sure Alberto would have much rather had it in getting that KO on Manectric. Instead, just getting some nice chip on the Landers at the cost of almost all of Gothitelle's health and really Gothitelle's ability to be useful. It's going to be so slow without any recovery option. Not going to have a chance to do something like Trick Room or really be great support for Snorlax over the course of the game.
Landers over on Raghav's side, moving first yet again, going to use Rock Slide and get the KO on that Gothitelle. There is a chance to flinch the Landers over on Alberto's side, and no, there's no flinch as Landers on Alberto's side goes for a U-turn, going to hit into that Landers slot and use that Intimidate for later on. Good chance to possibly reset the weather, but whatever comes in could possibly get knocked off anyway, so Charizard would probably be the best option if you don't want to take that much damage from the knockoff damage.
It's true, but you know that Landers on the other side is locked into Rock Slide.
Yeah, that's true as well. Of course, Charizard does have the option to protect to try to get something in that can, mitigate the threat of that Landers over on the other side as well. Charizard does come back in, going to bring out the Sun, so now Alberto's going to have to try to figure out what can come in, and Landis-Therian comes in. It's not doing that much damage. It is getting off Intimidates, which is important for the Incineroar and the Landis-Therian over on Raghav's side, but again, tough spot for this Charizard.
Yeah, really tough spot for this Charizard. Going to have to be facing down a Choice Scarf Rock Slide from Landers on the other side. Alberto's Landers comes in a pretty good spot, getting that really useful Intimidate and threatening either Rock Slide for some nice chip on both sides, or maybe Earthquake if he feels like Incineroar is a big enough problem. Having that Flying type Charizard as a partner is an option this turn. But yeah, I think Alberto's got to find some way to get the offense because eventually Manectric's going to come back in and put Rain right back up.
Charizard switches out here, not going to want to get hit with the Rock Slide from the Landers over on the other side. Landers goes for yet another Rock Slide because of that Choice Scarf. Of course, Raghav's Scarf Landers has been moving first a lot. U-turn from the Landers over on Alberto's side hits into that Incineroar. Going to be able to switch back into that Charizard after that Rock Slide threat is already over. But again, Alberto needs to find a way to deal with this Landers right now.
Yeah, I mean, something else is going to take an Incineroar attack this turn. He's slowly buying himself time, but it's just more Incineroar attacks coming out.
Yep, and a knockoff lands in that Charizard slot again because those items cannot be knocked off, not doing as much damage. Most importantly, Snorlax still has its berry intact, but of course it can easily just lose it. So now Snorlax needs to find a way to get the KO on that Landers.
And this chip damage against Charizard is valuable. Charizard's a Pokemon that often relies on taking that one hit, taking a Rock Slide after an Intimidate, taking a Volt Switch because it's not a Thunderbolt. You can't do that when you're down to 50% health.
Charizard protects here. Landers goes for a Rock Slide, going to hit into that Protect and hit that Snorlax. Snorlax is going to be able to go for a possible Double Edge, but I don't know if that's going to be enough to KO because you don't really have to invest in much attack if you're going to maximize it anyways. Knockoff from Incineroar hits the Snorlax and gets the Figgy Berry knocked off. Double Edge from Snorlax, going to hit into that Landers. Big damage. It does get the KO with the critical hit.
Wow, that's really useful for him. Gets Landers off the field, doesn't have to worry about those Choice Scarf Rock Slides anymore, and one of those Intimidate Pokemon is gone.
Yeah, but now you have to figure out how to deal with that Manectric that can easily come back in. Not only will it threaten that Charizard with all that chip damage with that Volt Switch, but you have to worry about that Rain Dance too. Because, well, Charizard has moves that it wants to be using in the sun. Solar Beam, Heat Wave, Overheat. If it gets weakened by, the rain, that's just not a good spot for that Charizard.
But it is a slightly vulnerable position for Raghav, because if Charizard just switches out, Landers comes in, blocks something with the Volt Switch, Snorlax can just KO Manectric. And then you're starting to look at a different game if it gets to be 2-3 in Alberto's favor. This, while still a really strong position for Raghav, there are opportunities here for Alberto to pick up another KO, get rid of these answers to Charizard, and then once it's in, it's a much better Pokemon, especially, Incineroar can eventually be dealt with that Landers Earthquake if you need it. And same thing is true for Manectric.
I don't believe we've actually seen that last Pokemon over on Raghav's side just yet. So there's also one Pokemon in the back. So Alberto kind of playing in the dark here, not knowing what he needs to preserve for later on. Of course, Incineroar in the sun with a Flare Blitz could also do massive amounts of damage to that Snorlax.
There's so many Intimidates, though. It's going to have to go out into the back and come in again if it wants to do that.
I guess with the critical hit as well. That's right. Charizard now switches out. Landorus going to come right back in. It could be a possible move for a Volt Switch and a Flare Blitz. Landorus, yet again, another Intimidate. I don't even know how many stat drops that Incineroar has taken here. Manectric now goes for a Volt Switch. Doesn't affect Landorus, so great switch right there from Alberto as the knockoff lands and connects with that Landorus there, knocking off that Choice Scarf. Snorlax goes for a double edge here. Going to hit into that Manectric. Is it? Well, yeah, that's a KO for sure. Snorlax, stab boosted double edge. So much damage. No Intimidates were dropped on it, really.
I think that was a really strong turn for Alberto.
Yeah.
Gets the KO, doesn't take the Volt Switch, and that knockoff really isn't that bad. The one Pokemon he really wanted to be faster than was Manectric, and it got KO'd that turn. Landorus is going to be faster than these two anyway, and so having now the flexibility to switch attacks may just end up being useful. I really think that was the play Alberto needed to make to start coming back in this game, and he managed to fit it in, and this is a very different looking game now.
Yeah, and Tapu Fini's operating in the sunlight. It's not exactly what it wants to be in order to face off against that Charizard as well, right? So, Tapu Fini can go for reduce Muddy Waters or even a reduce Hydro Vortex, but this turn just going to go for Moonblast, going to land in that Landorus, going to get the KO. So
I was wrong.
Fast Tapu Fini.
Tapu Fini is fast.
Incineroar goes for a Flare Blitz here. Gonna go ahead and connect in that Snorlax, but again, like you mentioned, those Intimidates gonna pay off huge dividends there. Gonna bring Snorlax down to 65 hit points as Snorlax goes for a double edge. Gonna connect into that Tapu Fini, gonna bring it down to about maybe 80%. And Alberto timed that perfectly because the sun fades, and now Charizard gets to come back in and reset the sun.
Yeah, and he maybe couldn't switch Charizard in that last turn, because if he had ended up with Charizard out and no sun, then he can't Solar Beam that Tapu Fini, and that Tapu Fini starts looking very difficult to deal with. So luckily, Charizard comes in, resets for a full more 5 turns of sun. He's going to be threatening Solar Beam against that Tapu Fini. Charizard definitely will be faster than that Tapu Fini, but Incineroar may end up being tough to deal with. Even with all these Intimidates, it's going to be close on whether Flare Blitz can knock out Snorlax. Charizard's not going to pick up damage super fast. It could be a close game. If Snorlax can get a critical hit off with knockoff, it'll make a huge difference.
Tapu Fini protects, not going to want to take a Solar Beam just yet. Raghav's still trying to inch his way onwards to victory as Charizard's going to absorb light, but most likely that Solar Beam is going to go into that Tapu Fini anyways, not going to do any damage at all. Incineroar goes for a Flare Blitz, going to connect on to that Snorlax. Is it going to be enough to get the KO? It is enough to get the KO thanks to that sunlight that was brought back in, I mean, what else are you going to do there? You got to KO that Snorlax.
Yeah, this is going to be a close finish, I think. Tapu Fini, if it goes down to the Solar Beam, we've seen it's fast, it's strong with that Hydro Vortex. I expect it will. Then it's just going to be Incineroar versus Charizard. Neither one's going to be doing huge damage to the other, but I do think those sun-boosted fire attacks will be enough to overcome Incineroar's defense, and there's been so many Intimidates against it. Those knockoffs aren't going to be doing much.
Charizard goes for a Solar Beam, going to land into that Tapu Fini. That might be enough to get the KO, considering this Tapu Fini is very fast and strangely offensive, and it does get the KO. A critical hit is really what Raghav's looking for here. Incineroar goes for a knockoff, going to chip away at that Charizard continuously. At this point, Flare Blitz actually does more damage because of the Sun Boost and the Stab Boost, but you're also taking residual recoil damage too, right?
Yeah, I mean, you really have to be looking for a critical hit knockoff, and so that means you've got to be trying to get as many of them off as you can. No reason to take recoil.
Yep, Heat Wave from Charizard hits in that Incineroar. It is going to go ahead and bring it down to about 25% as Raghav's Incineroar reveals that it is carrying a Berry here. Going to heal back 50% of its health. 2 more Heat Waves should be enough. Here comes a knockoff. Is there a critical hit? No critical hit right there.
Yeah, Alberto's got to be worrying every time he sees that knockoff come off, and worrying every time he sees that Heat Wave come out. A miss buys another turn for another critical hit.
Charizard using Heat Wave. Incineroar avoids it. Incineroar goes for a Flare Blitz now.
It does start going for a Flare Blitz, looking for the damage.
Yep, here comes the Flare Blitz. It is stronger than a knockoff. It does not. Charizard hangs on with 2 hit points.
But that missed Heat Wave.
Yeah, that was a huge miss Heat Wave right there. A critical hit. Heat Wave will be close to being able to get the KO here as, oh boy. Here comes the Heat Wave from Charizard. Does connect this time. Going to hit that Incineroar, but Incineroar does not get hit with a critical hit as Incineroar now goes for a knockoff and gets the KO. So Raghav Malaviya going to go ahead and take this set 2-0. And wow, that was such a close game.
Escapes with the game on that Heat Wave miss. It looked like he had, given up his big lead. He'd allowed a couple turns where he kept aggressively going after Charizard and losing the Pokemon that were able to aggressively go after Charizard, losing both the Landorus and the Manectric on turns when Charizard protected or switched. And then Charizard all of a sudden had all the offensive position it needed, but missed the Heat Wave.
Yeah, I mean, if that Heat Wave had just connected, that would have been great for Alberto to force that game 3. We saw that the berry activated just in time for that clutch, pull, like that clutch flare blitz. I mean, in the sun, stat boosted, that flare blitz was doing more damage than that knockoff was because the item wasn't getting knocked off. Great realization right there from Raghav. It was actually close to getting that KO.
Yeah, it almost got it. It took more than I expected.
Yeah, so Raghav Malaviya moves on to 2-0 after defeating Alberto Lara in a fast 2-0 set. What a set from both players, though. Alberto adjusted very well going into game 2.
Yeah, I think he pivoted. He felt like he needed to go for Charizard, but it still led for a tough game for him. He spent all of game 2 worrying about attacks towards that Charizard, getting blindsided by things like Rain Dance didn't help either. It really was a tough matchup for him. Every option he had, there was an answer on the other side.
Yeah, I mean, Raghav played that pretty well right there. I mean, turn 1, there was always that option. Raghav could have thought to himself, I think maybe Charizard's going to Mega Evolve here. I'm just going to go for the Rain Dance. And then if the Manectric did set up that Rain Dance and Charizard didn't Mega Evolve, well, then you're kind of out of luck right there, right? So Raghav called every turn, like, really, really well.
Yeah, went for a lot of smart plays, got that KO on Gothitelle, or missed KO, but all that damage off on Gothitelle going for that Volt Switch plus knockoff combination on turn 3. I think that was really valuable because otherwise Gothitelle could have maybe given Alberto more options, more ways to play out of the situations he was in. And
also, most importantly, heal those Pokemon back up too. We saw this mode in Oceania on stream. It was a very well thought out mode where he just preserved a lot of his Pokemon because of that heal pulse. But this Incineroar just threatened that Gothitelle so much every single time with that knockoff. Knocking it off, doing massive amounts of damage, knocking off that berry that Gothitelle really relied on to heal right back up.
And it spent the entire game on the field. It led, never switched, and then got the last KO.
With like 5 Intimidate drops on it.
Yeah.
I lost count of how many Intimidate drops was dropped on it.
It just stayed on the field, being a nuisance to Charizard, being a big threat to Gothitelle, was so useful for Raghav in that match.
Yeah, and of course, Manectric, MVP of that match. I think Manectric did some work. Granted, it didn't really do its purpose of hitting Volt Switches into Charizard, but
I think the tech moves were the MVP of that match. You got the Rain Dance, you have the Haze. I mean, just every time Alberto tried to reposition and find something, there was just the right tech move on the right Pokemon.
Yeah, I mean, wow. Great set from both players. We're going to go ahead and take a quick break, but when we come back, more action here at the 2018 Costa Mesa Regional Championships.